Imagine being able to run an experiment on life without touching a single living cell. Imagine changing a gene, testing a drug, watching a disease develop, or observing how an entire biological system responds, all inside a computer. It sounds like science fiction, but scientists are now working towards something surprisingly close to this idea. It's called an AI-driven digital organism. The concept is simple to describe, but incredibly difficult to build. Instead of creating one AI model that understands only DNA or another that understands proteins, researchers envision connecting many biological AI models together. The goal is to create one integrated system capable of representing biology across multiple levels, from molecules to proteins to cells to tissues, and eventually entire organisms. Think of it as a kind of world model for biology. Today, biological research is incredibly powerful, but it's also incredibly complicated. Inside even a single cell, thousands of molecular processes can happen at the same time. Genes are activated, proteins are produced, molecules interact, signals move between different parts of the cell, and all of these processes can influence one another. Now imagine trying to simulate that entire system. A normal computer model might focus on only one small part, but an AI-driven digital organism would attempt to connect these different layers together. The result could be something completely new, a virtual biological system that researchers can experiment with. For example, imagine a scientist wants to understand how a particular disease develops. Instead of starting with thousands of physical experiments, an AI system could potentially simulate different biological scenarios first. It could change a molecular pathway, observe the predicted cellular response, then test another possibility, and another. Millions of possibilities could potentially be explored computationally before the most promising ones reach the physical laboratory. This could completely change how scientists search for new medicines. Imagine a virtual drug entering a simulated cell. The AI watches how the molecule interacts with proteins. It predicts whether the treatment could work. It searches for possible side effects. Then it compares thousands of alternative molecules. The best candidates could eventually be sent to real laboratories for testing. This doesn't mean computers would replace biology experiments. In fact, the researchers behind the digital organism concept describe the technology as something that could make physical experiments more targeted and better informed. And that's an important distinction. This is not a digital human that already exists. It is a research vision for building increasingly powerful simulations of biological systems. And there is another fascinating possibility. The system could learn from real experiments. Imagine an AI makes a prediction. Scientists test that prediction in a laboratory. The experiment produces new data. That data goes back into the AI. The model improves. It makes another prediction. Another experiment follows. And the cycle continues. Prediction, experiment, data, learning, prediction again. This could create a powerful feedback loop between artificial intelligence and biological science. But biology has a major problem. It is incredibly complex. Two people can have the same disease, but respond differently to the same treatment. Biological systems are full of uncertainty, and an AI model can only be as good as the data and scientific understanding behind it. If the model learns the wrong relationship, it could make a confident prediction that is simply incorrect. That is why validation will be one of the biggest challenges. A digital organism cannot simply look convincing. Its predictions have to match reality. And reality is extremely complicated. A virtual cell might behave perfectly in a simulation and still fail to predict what happens inside a real cell. A virtual drug might look promising on a computer and still fail in a laboratory. So the goal isn't to escape the physical world. The goal is to understand it better before making expensive and risky experiments. And if this technology eventually becomes reliable, the consequences could be enormous. Drug discovery could become faster. Scientists could investigate diseases in completely new ways. Personalized medicine could potentially use digital models to predict how different biological systems might respond to treatments. And researchers could explore biological questions that would be too expensive or too slow to test entirely in the physical world. But perhaps the most interesting part is where this technology could eventually lead. Today, we're trying to model pieces of biology. Tomorrow, we may connect those pieces. And eventually, we could have increasingly detailed digital representations of living systems. Not perfect copies, not artificial life, but computational models that understand more and more about how life works. And that changes something fundamental. For centuries, scientists studied life by observing it from the outside. Now, artificial intelligence could give us a new way to experiment with biology from inside a simulation. The dream is not simply to create a computer that can imitate life. The dream is to create a system that can help us understand life well enough to predict it. And if that happens, the laboratory of the future may not always begin with a microscope. Sometimes, it may begin with a simulation.